As everyone knows, the Notre Dame cathedral in Paris more or less burned down. It's one more of these really large events happening around the world where one feels completely helpless. Surprisingly, within minutes, it was suggested that renovations near the tower accidentally caused the fire and that terrorism is essentially ruled out. And very quickly, the French president aims to rally together the divided nation to rebuild the tower within a few years. Completely unrealistic and utopian. What the mainstream media is not reporting is that there have been arsenic attacks on many Christian churches in France during the last couple of years. And based on this background knowledge, it is surprising that a terrorist attack is so quickly ruled out. In particular, the fire occurred after 6 o'clock in the evening. This is often when there's no construction workers around. Second, these are not ordinary construction workers, the average guy who fixes your bathroom and messes it up. These are highly skilled people working on these relicts from the medieval times. There's very little mention about investigations. All one can read that workers are being questioned. There doesn't seem to be any urgency resolving what caused this fire. I'm no friend of conspiracy theories, but these events, and many more which happened before, do indeed indicate the decline of the Christian Western world. I don't want to go too much into politics, but I wanted to briefly talk about the initial response by Macron, and because it was so spontaneous and little prepared, one can read a lot in the body language and behavior of the people involved. So let's look at Macron here in the center, the president of France, getting informed about the level of destruction when he's at the scene of the fire on April 15th and speaking to the chief of the fire brigades and what we can see from the body language. Who else is in the picture? I think this is Edouard Philippe, the prime minister, the key figure of Macron's cabinet. Then here, this is the mayor of Paris, and this is Macron's wife. I don't know exactly who these two guys are with the white hair. Let's look at the dynamics in slow motion. So we can see the power dynamics very nicely. So Macron as a leader is moving on very steadily. You have to imagine the cameras and journalists are in front of him, crowding in front of him, but he walks very calmly. It's of course highly staged. He's informed by the fire brigade guy, and because he's leader, people turn to him, and he moves on very steadily, not turning his head left or right. This is a dynamic of power. His wife turns to him, and then this guy, I don't know whose it is. Again, the guy is turning around. Of course, he's in an awkward position because he's moving in front of the fire brigade guy. So he has to turn around once in a while to see if everyone is still following. But he seems to be also very close to Macron and trying to please him. Let's look at it again. He's turning around. So she's turning around, the mayor. He's leaning in because he's talking to him. He turned a little bit, now he's turning more. The wife is turning, and he's moving on steadily, not looking on the floor. So let's look when Macron is actually talking to the press.
Good evening, everybody. What has happened this evening in Paris and in this cathedral of Notre Dame is obviously a terrible tragedy. And above all, my thoughts and my thanks.
So he clenched the teeth, there's some anger, but the eyes are wide open of Macron. He's not blinking very much, so there's some expression of fear. But that's potentially also natural, considering this unexpected fire and the confusion around it. Here's again the prime minister. Also, it's very hard to watch everyone at the same time. He seems relatively annoyed, and I don't think they get along very well. So he was one of the people who recently criticized him. Macron, and there was some reshuffling of Macron's cabinet as well, in part because of the Yellow Vest demonstrations and the unrest in the country and how to deal with it. Here the mayor has a very intense look on her face. You see also these concentration and potentially anger lines. It looks also she just came back from skiing because there's the lighter skin around her eyes. This is one of the leading priests of the Notre Dame Cathedral. His honorary title is Monseigneur. That's a title given by the Pope. Here's a fire brigade guy. Somewhere in the background, I think this is Macron's wife. And then there's one of these white-haired guys hanging on Macron's lips and nodding once in a while. But he seems very close to Macron, and he seems a brown nose. He seems to please Macron.
Go to the firefighters of Paris.
Here we saw the annoyedness here in his face. Eyebrows down, sign of anger, and a forced smile, and stepping back and forth on his feet.
500 of them for several hours have been fighting against the flames and continue to do so.
Rolling his eyes.
And will continue to do so for hours and several days. The worst has been avoided.
Did you see his eyes? Let's look at this again.
The worst has been avoided. But the
That's a sign of surprise, the open eyes and the raised eyebrows. So apparently he's surprised about the statement. He might not agree with that the worst has been averted. It seems pretty damaged, the church.
But the battle isn't fully won yet. In the next few hours, there will be difficult circumstances.
He presses his lips together, he's annoyed. And this guy is hanging on Macron's lips here.
But thanks to their courage, the facade and the two main towers of the
Courage, he had a very critical look on his face.
The cathedral have not collapsed. My thoughts also go to all the Parisians.
Here again.
Notre Dame of Paris. Parisians. My thoughts
Here,
also
watch.
go to all the Parisians.
Again, surprise.
Notre Dame of Paris is their cathedral, and more than that.
Again.
The mayor of Paris has been
Here.
with us throughout these hours. As soon as the first flames, I know how deeply affected she is and how deeply affected are the inhabitants of the city. My thoughts also go.
She looked down briefly. She was a little bit embarrassed just because he pointed her out, but she also agreed.
To all our fellow countrymen, Notre Dame of Paris is our history, our literature, our imagination, the place where we
This guy.
have experienced all our great historic moments, epidemics, wars, the liberation. It's the epicenter of our life. It is the standard whereby all the distances across Paris and France are measured, and many books, so many books and paintings have been.
He seems very unprepared. He's just blubbering around. He hasn't been enough briefed about what the cathedral is about.
Entered it or never seen it close up.
It's interesting.
This history is our people, even those who
Watch
have
this
never,
guy.
entered it or never seen it close up.
He put his head up, looked kind of proud for a second. He's one of the people who ended the cathedral. He's one of the special ones. And then he licked his lips, which is now unclear why he did it. This could indicate some sort of pleasure.
This history is our history. It is burning. It is burning, and I know the sadness. This
Sadness, and he's smiling a little bit. So he's this little brown nose who is he has this big moment right now in the spotlight next to Macron, more or less.
terrible feeling inside which so many of our fellow citizens are feeling. And this evening, I would also like to say a few words of hope for all of us. This hope is the pride that we should all feel.
So these two guys look confused and they take their distance from Macron and watch him carefully. He looks annoyed in the other direction, like he doesn't want to be part of it, and he's glued to Macron.
the pride of all those who have fought
He's again nodding.
to prevent
It's
the
a brown
worst.
nose.
And it is probably part of our destiny as France.
So
And
these
our
two guys
project
seem to
for
be
the years
hearing these ideas about rebuilding it right away for the first time. So they seem to be slightly confused and move away from Macron to be able to watch and hear him better. Hearing means also to be able to read his lips and to see his facial expressions, so that's why they move around and watch him.
to come, and I make this commitment.
So he makes this commitment, and this top priest of the church hears it for the first time.
From tomorrow, a national subscription will be organized in France and beyond our borders. We will call on the most talented people, and there are many of them, and they will come and contribute
He's nodding again, the brown nose.
to this appeal. We will rebuild the cathedral. We will rebuild Notre Dame, because this is what the French expect, because this is what our history deserves, because it's our deep destiny.
He looks annoyed. He looks down in sadness. So what was the point of this analysis? To some degree I was shocked myself about these reoccurring events and the fact that the media is not critical about figuring out the reasons for them. In particular, the church is burning, and the first reaction would be anger and an urge to figure out who did it. And then moving on and rallying everyone together would be a much later step. And this wouldn't be done during the time when the church is still burning. So there's this confusion I feel going around. And I also realized, looking at Macron's response, is that it's all fake. It's all a little power struggle. There was more fear in Macron's facial expressions than determination. And I wonder whether it wasn't actually a terrorist attack, considering it was the week before Easter, and because of the huge symbolic character of the Notre Dame Cathedral, and also because there have been smaller attacks on Christian church in France during the last couple of years. So all these clues would point in a very different direction from what the media and Macron are portraying. So I find this very frustrating. Okay, so I hope you liked the video, and talk to you next time. Bye.